Now, I've had my first fixie blade back in the Boy Scouts sometime in 1982, and since then I've had a love affair with fixie blades. Back in the day, it was very rare to be able to pick up a decent Victorinox knife at the time, and locally made fixie blades or military surplus bayonets were all that was available in the market. Well, that particular fixed blade has long been lost in time, and it wasn't until 2012 when I picked myself up a new fixie blade, and this was the Boker CLB Edit. And I really enjoyed that small fixie blade at the time. It was also when I did not have that many folding pocket knives at the time. So the Boker was my go-to cutting tool for quite a long time before I eventually got into pocket folders. So I've had a love affair with fixed blades since then, and in fact, to this day, I technically have more fixed blades than I do folding knives. That's just the way I roll these days. And so you might ask, what are the pros or advantages of carrying a fixed blade as against a pocket folder? Well, let me get this out of the way, but the first advantage is definitely the cool factor. Compared to everybody else who has a folding knife or a Swiss Army knife, you cannot deny that there's a certain badass factor whipping out a fixie blade whenever, wherever. Of course, that's depending on where you are and what you're doing. Like me, I'm mostly outdoors or in the field, so probably a fixed blade isn't so intimidating as it would be in a so called polite environment. Number two, or probably the number one advantage of a fixed blade over a pocket folder is the fact that it's more robust and it's more reliable than a pocket folder. It's as simple as that. There's just less moving parts and less things to break. There's no screws to play around with. There's no lock that's bound to fail. And another advantage of a fixed blade is that it's the original one hand opening knife. So it doesn't, all you need to do is pull it out of the sheath and that's it. A fixie blade is much more deliberate and much simpler in operation compared to a folding knife. And lastly, definitely there's the cost. A fixie blade will cost considerably less than a quality pocket folder. Well, basically, the fixed blades that I have are much cheaper than, let's say, my Spyderco Native 5. Now, this particular fixed blade is much cheaper than my folding Spyderco Native 5 lightweight, and although they're basically just about the same size, like I said, the fixed blade will be more robust and more reliable than a folding blade any day of the week. Over the years, what kinds of fixed blades have I carried aside from the Boker Edit? I also have the Mora Robust, which is also a permanent part of my survival LBE. Of course, my main fixie, the Real Steel Receptor, which I carry off and on, and I call it my urban fixie. You have to distinguish that this is not necessarily a bushcrafting knife with its smooth spine, and it's basically not built for bushcrafting, but it's a very good everyday carry. Or urban fixie, since I'd like to make that distinction because I don't carry this on a daily basis, or it's only carried periodically. So I make the distinction of the urban fixie specifically to refer to the fixed blades that I carry on an everyday basis. So the biggest reason for me to choose a fixie is simply the feel or the ergonomics, as they say. But in reality, nothing will ever feel as good as a fixie blade in the hand. Now, compared to some of my folders, for example, the Native 5 lightweight, although they're just about the same size as the Real Steel Receptor, folding blades in general will have several hot spots in the grip and especially the pocket clip. So even the best designed folding blades cannot match the ergonomics of a well designed or even the simplest fixed blade designs like the Mora Eldris, for example, which has very little contours, but there's a good palm swell on this to accommodate any hand size. And as you can see, the girth of the width is so comfortable in the hand, especially when you're using it. And that's precisely why I choose a fixie blade, because I want to use it. And I've always taken into consideration, will I feel any hot spots, or how comfortable will the blade be when you actually put it to good use. So that's a major consideration for me. A fixie blade was meant to be used. So now that we've talked about the advantages of the fixie blade, let's talk about what makes a fixie blade impractical. One is the carry options. For example, a fixie blade can only be carried either in the vertical or in the scout carry or horizontal position, and that's about it. The next obvious difference of a fixie blade with a pocket folder, here's my real steel compared to my largest folder, which is the Spyderco Bird Caracara. You will notice that the Caracara has more blade length and cutting edge length than the real steel receptor. And of course, the receptor is considerably shorter, but in its folded length, the Caracara is just a little bit shorter than the real steel blade. So there might not be enough blade length for you compared to, let's say, a large folding blade. Third disadvantage of a fixie blade is it's naturally more intimidating than, let's say, a Swiss Army knife. So whipping out a fixed blade at the wrong place at the wrong time is going to get you into trouble. It's as simple as that. So, knowing all the pros and cons of fixed blades versus pocket folders, it's generally up to you to decide which type of knife you'd like to carry on a daily basis or whenever you feel like it. Personally, I like carrying a fixie blade when I know I'm going outdoors or out in a field, whenever I do medical missions out there in the boondocks or in remote areas. I'd rather have a fixed blade on me backed up with a small Swiss Army knife. But within the urban setting, this is about as big as I can go. And actually, this is my urban fixie. This is my permanent. I had one favorite urban fixie which is no longer in my collection, and that's the K-Bar TDI. It already belongs to one of the fans of the channel. And practically, this and my little Boker little friend are all that's in my regular urban fixie rotation. I won't call it EDC because it's not really with me strictly on an everyday basis. And when I say EDC or everyday carry system, it has to be something that I carry with me on a permanent or semi-permanent basis. But just the same, if I'm out in the field, I'd love to have a fixie on me. But if I'm just up and about in the city, it's more convenient for me to carry even my largest pocket folder or a Swiss Army knife. But I won't deny that I really, really love a good fixie blade on me, simply because for the reasons that I've already stated. The reliability, the simplicity, the robustness of a fixie blade is really hard to beat. And like I said, if I wanted a knife that I can use and abuse, I'd really look to a fixie blade for that particular role. So, do I like fixie blades? And on a side note, I'd like to thank everyone who's been supportive of the channel. I've been noticing that there's been an increase of about 3 more subscribers for the month of January. 706 subscribers as of this point. But I appreciate that. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the likes and comments. Especially the comments gives me a chance to be able to interact with those of you who have questions about the everyday carry system or other stuff. And I thank you so much for that. If you like the video, don't hesitate to smash that like button and hopefully become a subscriber if you're still on the fence about it. That's been the long and the short of it. This has been Absabando for Manila Sentinel Raw. Stay sharp.
Flyback 5100, maintain runway heading, climb 3,000 feet, runway 13, clear for immediate takeoff.